Good morning or good afternoon to the people in the east of our fine country. I would like to welcome you to the Canada Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Research Network's webinar, FASD and Education. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Pam Henheffer. I'm the program manager for the Foothills Fetal Alcohol Society. Prior to my 17 years here, I had 25 years of being an assistant manager to a residential program for children in care, as well as a manager of a program transitioning teens. I'm grateful for the lived experience of a variety of disabilities, inclusive of FASD, before even FASD was known in the country. I would like at this time to do our land acknowledgement.
We have a slide for that.
We have a slide for that.
We do.
We do. An important step in reconciliation is the acknowledgement of traditional treaty lands and recognition for the people of the territory. The Canada FASD Research Network recognizes the historical significance and contributions of Indigenous people and their cultures, and understands the important role that the Indigenous community plays today and in the future. We acknowledge that we live, work, and meet on traditional territories across Canada of many of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries.
Thanks for that slide.
Our presenters are Danna Ormstrup and Brenda Feland. Danna Ormstrup has been in the field of FASD for the past 25 years and has a background in disability supports. She's presently the executive director of the Foothills Fetal Alcohol Society and is enjoying working with school staff as this is where she began her journey with the Faculty of Education at the University of Calgary. She is well-versed in classroom strategies for those with FASD and is connected to a wealth of resources, including FASD, trauma-informed strategies, and ADHD. Welcome, Danna.
Thank you. We can lose that slide, actually. We need to minimize them at this point.
Brenda
back up.
Feland lives in small town Claresholm in southern Alberta, but works in the Lakeland FASD network.
We do.
Her work history has been extensive over the past 40 years, starting with a background in early childhood development. That's kind of giving away your age.
I know. I started when I was 3.
Numerous courses, workshops, and sessions related to supporting those impacted by FASD and a variety of disabilities. Brenda has worked the last 13 years for Lakeland Center for FASD as an outreach coordinator, which has gifted her with a lot of knowledge and experience working with children, youth, and adults on the FASD spectrum, as well as the privilege of collaborating caregivers, school staff. Welcome, you two.
Thank you. Thank
you. These ladies have been instructional coaches with the Alberta RAP partnership program, RAP being Wellness, Resiliency, and Partnership. For today's presentation, we will first be hearing from Brenda with a brief introduction and PowerPoint of FASD and the RAP project.
You might notice that this webinar has a little bit of a different format. If you're a CanFASD webinar lover, like many of us are, you will have noticed that often it's somebody giving really good research or information about innovative practices, best practices, new research. We chose today to use a conversational format because we think that one of the ways that you can present information is by having just conversation. So we know that for you educators out there, having a conversation with caregivers is kind of tricky. And if you're a caregiver out there, sometimes we get our heart pumping when we go to talk to a school. So we wanted to relax and invite you to have a cup of coffee as you have a conversation with us about what it's like in education settings when dealing with caregivers or the community. Okay, Brenda.
Thanks, Danna.
So in order to talk about FASD, our RAP program in Alberta, I needed to give you a little brief thing as to how our province is divided. Our province has been divided into networks, FASD networks. And so each of these networks, so if you look at that map that we've got up, you will see that each of these networks have a network, an FASD agency that takes care of their needs in that area. So for instance, Danna works for the purple one down at the bottom around Calgary. I work for the light blue one around Cold Lake, and Pam is also in the Calgary zone.
The purple one. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually live in the purple zone, but I actually work in the light blue zone. A lot of traveling. Okay, next slide, please. So WRAP stands for Wellness, Resiliency, and Partnership. And it's 2.0 because this is the second pilot of WRAP. It was set up a little differently the first time. They've learned some things and we've set it up again. It's a 5-year. It's a 5-year program. We are now in the 4th year, actually halfway through the 4th year. We're into the 3rd quarter of the 4th year. So we're getting towards the end. We're getting to the part where our stats are getting excited as to, we do a lot of stats for the government. So WRAP is, we introduce and build rapport with the school districts and schools in Alberta. So this is our game plan. This is what we do as WRAP people. We introduce and build rapport with the schools and the school districts. We recognize each school's level of FASD knowledge and their availability to develop a tailored learning program. We find finding that PD time in the schools is probably our biggest challenge. Having time where the staff has time, because often in a district, for instance, one of my districts has 25 schools, we will go like all of them will have the same PD day. I can't be in 25 places at once. So it does certainly take 5 years to get around to all of our schools. We train and coach every school in Alberta, and we build bridges between, and this is really important, between the schools and those existing networks. So when we are done in 5 years, they will have a good relationship with their networks.
I just want to say something about that. As you're talking, I was thinking how important that is, whether you have a province that's filled with networks, the idea of building a bridge between schools and existing community agencies, school and existing policymakers, school and existing citizens. That idea, resiliency and partnerships, the partnership piece is as important as all the other pieces that we do around PD, wouldn't you say?
I would say so, most definitely.
I'd like to add, as being a representative of caregivers, what I hear from both caregivers and educators is the allowance of flexibility in regards to how we approach different scenarios. We can come in and speak for 15 minutes, or we can come in and do a whole one-day, full-day workshop. And everybody's appreciative of that because of their time constraints.
And we'll speak to a little bit of that on my next slide, and that's where we can flip to. Thank you. Slowly.
That's a slow flip.
So what is the WRAP's role in this partnership, and how do we, what steps do we take to accomplish our goals? So the first thing that we look at doing is educating through professional learning. So we typically go and do a whole staff, but sometimes that isn't available. We don't have a time that we can do that. So we might go in and do, so I have done like all of their educational assistants at one time and their teaching staff at another time. I've done lunch and learns where we go in, I will go in 4 times for an hour. And each time, the first 2, there'll be 2 different groups. So like on Tuesday, I'll have half the staff and the other half do supervision and some of the classes over lunch. And then this Thursday is the same presentation, but to the other half.
Right.
And then we repeated that once a month for 4 months straight. And it worked wonderfully for their school.
Right.
So we have to look at what works for their school.
Exactly.
We collaborate in small groups with, I see my slides are kind of off. Or with individuals. So we will talk to the staff, talk to the teachers about individuals, students, but we don't work with individual students. We don't work with students, and we don't work with caregivers as a WRAP program. But we do collaborate, and what's happening in your school, that's what we want to know. We don't want to just go into a school, stand up, give a presentation, read off of slides, and then walk away. We collaborate, like what's happening in your school, where do you need help? And we strategize through coaching. So we will then, I would set up coaching, a lot of mine are virtual. Some people their schools are near them, so they have more time to go into a school. I'll do a lot of mine virtually. So if they've got a prep, then they book me, they just call and say, can I talk to you? I've got this going on. And I give them strategies and we work through things. And then lastly, we apply and evaluate all those strategies. We always want to go back and say, how did that work for you? And do we need to tweak it in any way?
So if you're not from Alberta and you're listening to this, know that you can reach out to us and we can help you look at the history and the development and the curriculum planning and the way this all happened from a RAP strategy. If you're in a different province and want to try this in a school division or in a school yourself or in your whole province, give us a chat and we'll help you work through that process.
All right, next slide. Okay. So I wanted to talk now a little bit about FASD so that you'll have some general knowledge. A lot of you may already have this. One of these are just some little aha moments that we've gotten and that we need to keep in the back of our mind regarding FASD. So FASD, actually, the prevalence of it is 4% of the people in Canada. That doesn't sound like a lot, 4%, but when you break that down, that's 1.5 million people in Canada, 174,000 people in Alberta, 1 in 25, 1 in every 25. When we think about the size of your classroom, typically 25. So we like to say, very likely have at least one student in every classroom with FASD. They may not all be diagnosed, but they're probably there. And you may be picking them out a lot after this presentation. You'll be like,
Not at the beginning, though, because it's a hidden disability.
That's right. Can we flip slides again, please? Here's a big aha moment that a lot of the schools have said to me. They're like, whoa, I never realized that. FASD is a leading disability. If you look at the circles down the side, you'll see, like at the bottom circle, FASD is 40 times more common than Tourette syndrome. Tourette syndrome is only 0.1% of the population. FASD is 28 times more common than Down syndrome. Down syndrome is only 0.14%. Cerebral palsy is 0.21% of the population, and FASD is 19 times more common than cerebral palsy. Autism, which has a lot of a go right now in the community. We seem to be getting a lot of funding, a lot of great things happening with that. We are still 2.5% more common than autism. They're at 1.52%. So if you remember back to the last slide, it showed us that we are at 4%. So this means that FASD is more common than autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, and Tourette's all combined.
I think another point that I hear teachers talk about and caregivers is, can you have FASD and another diagnosed disability? And that answer is yes. So 4% might include that as well. So another thing to think about, are we missing something? I work with a few students now that have a diagnosis of autism and FASD, and there is a difference in the way that you would strategize with those kids.
Yes. So I think that's it for slides. We can take the slides down now, right? And we're off to some questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. As a caregiver supporter, I've come across teachers and caregivers, Danna, about communication between home and school. And I know, having been with you for years here, that you've got some really good strategies in regards to what we can share with parents especially and teachers of how we feel about communication.
I think my number one observation about schools and communication is, just like we're sitting and have a conversation, is the more conversational an education school support system can be, and the caregiver and whatever other community agencies might be involved in that family, the better. So I'm going to say that again, the more conversational, the better. So if either one of you have that heart pounding, so-and-so's coming in and we have to talk about Johnny, Kelly, Susan, you're not at the point where you can have open and honest communication. So conversations that might need some courage are important, but they're important that they are as unique as the families in which you're having the conversation. So that would be one. We have parents that want to hear from you every day. We have parents that say, please don't, I'll be so overwhelmed, call me on Fridays. We have parents that say, can I come in once a month? We have parents that say, I need an email at the end of the day. So to give a general advice about what that needs to look like would be doing a disservice to the families, because it will be a neat strategy about communication. The only sort of one universal, and I think you guys would agree, that I would have is that it shouldn't happen through an agenda book, because that agenda book isn't going to make it home. So whenever you can, the conversation, yes, it needs to include the student if that's appropriate, but more than that, it's you and the caregiver, and asking the caregiver what they need and being honest about what you might need as an educator.
Brenda, have you got anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, Danna, I'm just wondering about, have you run across any situations where you've had like split families?
Good question. Good question. And you will have some as educators. My daughter is a single parent. Her ex-husband also has some rights to what conversations happen, not an everyday day-to-day conversation, but he gets the report card. That's a really good question, and comes back to that idea of the conversation that you're going to have with a caregiver group will be as unique as the group. So you'll have to ask that, won't you?
Yeah.
You know, if kids are being parenting, going back and forth, how do you make sure both co-caregiver gets the information?
Sometimes that looks different. Sometimes it might be you may want both of those co-parents in the room, but sometimes we may need to do it. It's not possible, or it's not going to be healthy.
Right.
So sometimes we might have to have double that up. But it's important that everybody knows what is happening.
And as in my position, what comes to me when we're talking about this is regards my role as a supporter in the caregiver program, is that I always want educators to know if someone comes into a meeting that is like me, I'm there to support both, not just primarily for the caregiver. It's just basically to be another set of ears and be able to interpret what's being said on both sides, because oftentimes it gets pretty overwhelming for a caregiver in any kind of education meeting.
So I think that idea of welcoming people into the conversation that are appropriate from the caregiver's perspective, if they need Aunt Hilda there, you want Aunt Hilda there. If they need their child's therapist to be there, you want to be open to that, but you want to do that in a way that works for you in your education setting.
This is a time of this whole presentation that I'm just going to put a little bit of advice, I think about. And that is basically, remember that FASD is a lifelong disability. And so many of those beautiful little children that we've seen and looked after in the past is future parents. And so many of our parents may have this disability that we're not being able to recognize. So just remember to file it into the back of your head if you have a parent there that's not meeting the expectations, that seems frustrated and overwhelmed, not getting there on time, and not being able to follow through with your expectations. Just remember. Question 2 is for Brenda. We come across the concept of universal design in our classrooms. Can you tell us what that means and how it affects everyone?
I can. Fiona has a slide for me for that one. There we go. Thank you. So I think a lot of you already know that term universal design. We've been using a lot, especially in the school system for a few years now. But basically, it's a learning framework that supports all learners. And we really need to, as educators, remember that universal design sits with this one well, because FASD is often not a visible disability. Very often not a visible, right? Yep. And also often they have not been diagnosed, but they're still in your classroom. So these are just a few things that we need to remember. And this is what RAP really works on. The strategies that we use, the strategies that we present and that we help with, we try to make them anytime possible of universal design, that it can work in your whole classroom. So the 3 things about universal design are the first is that you represent your content in multiple ways. And you'll notice we're sort of doing that right now, right? And we did this for a purpose. I'm comfortable with slides. I know that some people like slides in order to cue in. So I'm using slides.
I'm using cheat cards
Yeah.
because I'm older and my memory is not as good as it should
Right.
be.
So it's conversational,
Yeah.
but she has cue cards with her. And Dana, as you'll see as she gets into things, likes to use props. And she's great at it. I am not near as great at it because it's things that I will drop, basically. So represent your content in multiple ways. Expect multiple ways for the student to express their knowledge. They might not do well on tests. They might not do well on being able to write things down, but can they tell you if they understand the concept that's being taught?
So Brenda, that word it shouldn't be accept, it should be accept,
Oh,
right?
okay.
That's okay, just a typo. I just didn't want you to think
Yes, sorry.
that you want to leave them out. You want
Yes.
to
Oh my,
accept instead of accept.
there you
Yeah.
go. That's what happens when I steal
All right.
lines out of other people's things. Oh, I got caught. No.
Thank you.
Provide multiple ways for the student to engage. So I saw a great example of this in one of the, I should have taken pictures of her classroom. I had a teacher who had this phenomenal classroom set up. And I first went in there because I saw it empty, no students. I'm like, this, I got to see this in action because I can't see it working. She had so many different ways for students to sit and just be in her classroom. And they got to pick every morning when they walked in. Go ahead, pick a seat. Nobody had one desk.
Yeah.
So it
Everybody
was,
had wherever.
was it desks
There
and
was-
bikes?
There was standing desks. There
Ball.
was sitting desks. There were those yoga ball chairs. There were wiggly worm seats. She had some students laying on the floor, a mat, and with a sort of a board in front of like a clipboard sort of a thing where they could write, but they were laying down. It was amazing to see. I was like, this is not going to work. And I was there for half the day and I was shocked. They were and this was the end of September. So you would think they would still be a little crazy, right? But no, they would just come in, pick a spot. There was no fighting over spots because they knew they could change every day. Yeah, it was just so it was just multiple ways for those students to engage.
Thanks, Brenda. That universal design threw me when I first saw that in the questions and whatever, because I know all about it, but I didn't have that name around it. So thank you. Danna, got anything to add?
No, I was just going to talk just a sentence about recognizing in my journey that started also a long time ago in the Faculty of Education. At that point, you went through education as a special ed teacher or a regular ed teacher or a kindergarten teacher or a high school teacher. And I know that there is a challenge for you all and in finding inclusive opportunities in school systems. And so recognize who in your school might have specialized support abilities. We see some phenomenal regular ed teachers that do beautiful things like that in our classroom. We know that there are people that have more of a propensity really about going and having some special ed techniques. So if you can find somebody in your school that does that well, make sure to lean on them because they kind of get it.
Thank you.
We can drop the slide.
Next question. We hear a lot about the need to understand how dysmaturity plays
Homework.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Skipped ahead.
I just skipped ahead. Danna, talk to us. I have so many conversations with caregivers. I could go on for 45 minutes.
One of the top things.
Talking about the homework part. And so Danna, share with the people some strategies and some stories in regards to how complicated that is for parents.
When you think about going home at the end of the day from your busy day at school and making supper and the challenges that are if you're the supper maker in your home, and then you think about having to sit down and mark report cards, or you think about having to take an online learning test or course, I think one of the things that we need to really pay attention to, and again, it's knowing your caregiver group, right? It's knowing where that student is going home to. What does it look like that night? I want us to be really careful that homework isn't given as a way to catch up, that homework isn't given because everybody else is doing it, so that child should do it. I want us to encourage learning. And so you might send home some work that is, hey, tonight, take a look here in Alberta. I don't know what it's like everywhere else. There's a big solar system coming through. And so I would expect that every teacher is saying, hey, if you get a chance, the Northern Lights are happening tonight. I don't know where you live, but you might want to take a look and come back and tell me. The idea of finishing the math sheet that didn't happen in school might be a rethink for you. When you think about the behaviors that you're seeing in school and the amount of brain power and regulation it takes to just be present for 6 and 7 hours in the school system, and then think about asking a child to do that when they get home again at night, and what that family has to give up to keep that child regulated through that process, not alone the importance of the way that you teach it at school and the way that the parent is going to teach it at home might be really complicated for one of the students that have FASD.
And just recognize the caregivers are tired. This living day to day, the lived experience is emotionally exhausting. And so for them to have to either expect their child to sit down and do more work, it's better for that child to be able to be in a quiet family atmosphere instead of continuing to feel under the gun for getting work done.
I often see it. I sort of see pieces of this, it being a nana and being a grandma.
Yeah.
I've got 3 grandkids, and I don't like it much when my daughter tells me, okay, they're going to your house, but this and this and this, and these are the rules. And I'm like, no, they're at Nana's house now. And if I want to give them a treat, I'm going to give them a treat. And yes, we have ice cream on our waffles in the morning because it's fun and it's exciting. So,
exactly.
So we have to remember expectations are different in every home and in every place, and we can't set their expectations. So if their expectations at home is to be able to have a quiet evening without blow-ups, then homework is probably not on the table.
Yeah, and lots of the kids' medications are wearing off or worn off. So
see yourselves as the experts in teaching.
Yeah.
Parents aren't experts in teaching. So the best teaching that can happens formally in your environment because you're good at it. Not all parents are good at it.
No.
And we have to look at education, the classes themselves, the knowledge that they're learning. We have to remember they have a disability. So we need to look at it being more about progress. Have they progressed over the year? Not are they at grade level? Right. Are we seeing progression?
As my pretty full lifetime of living with different individuals with different disabilities, one of the things I did pick up on and learn sometimes too late, but learned in regards to how hard certain transitions are for children.
Are we on
dysmaturity? Your question ahead of yourself.
It's because I talked, so you thought it was mine last.
She threw me off, and you're so kind to me. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I'm going to talk about that at the end. We need to hear, and we hear a lot about the needs to understand dysmaturity. And it plays a very vital role in education and with students. Brenda, give us your thoughts on this.
Sure, well, I have a slide for that. Thank you, Fiona.
Love the slide. Thanks, Fiona.
In case you didn't catch that, the word is dysmaturity. Well, Fiona is putting the slide up.
Yes. Next one. Perfect. Now, when I first heard this word, actually was right after I started with Lakeland Center. So like 14, 15 years ago, something like that. Dysmaturity is widely varying levels of maturity in different areas of development. And boy, does it really capture.
Favorite slide.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, when I first started, it came, the person that presented it said the slide came from Diane Melvin. She's like a guru in FASD. We have seen different levels of it. I'm not sure who made this, but I did get this slide from CanFASD. So what you need to look at in this slide is the person in the black that says above it, actual age, the one with the 18 on their shirt. So we're thinking, so I want you to put in your mind somebody who is 18 years of age, but someone who has an FASD. So we very often, this is a kind of an average. This can certainly vary from child to child,
And
adult to
this was a
adult.
study that was done.
This was a study that was done to get these averages, and it's eye-opening. So if you are 18, often your expressive language is 20, which means, and we see this all the time, they can talk the talk. They can talk circles around you. You can walk away from that thinking, oh, they're great.
Big words, big vocabulary.
Unfortunately, we run into a problem there because at age 18, they are often moving out into the real world, right? And they are applying for services. And a lot of times the people that they are applying to could be PDD, could be, I'm not sure, AISH, depends on your province, but the services that they need and will get funded for as an adult. They can go into a meeting and they can say, oh yeah, I know how to grocery shop, no problem, check. But then I can say, and I like to go with them because I can say, oh, just a minute. So if you went to the store, what would you put in your cart? Pepsi, Doritos, like that's very much. So we have to really get to a little deeper level thinking there when we're asking those questions. Now, if we look down at reading ability, we see it at 16. 16 to 18, that's not really a great problem, really. Like there's lots of 18-year-olds that read at a 16 level, right? At this page. But what goes with reading? Who knows? Comprehension. We know that, right? Where do you find comprehension on that chart? Way down at the bottom, 6. They often have a reading ability of 16, but a comprehension level of 6 years old. That causes a huge problem.
And even more so with the expressive language
Exactly.
being 20-year.
Exactly. So think about those things while you're going. Look at living skills. They say that they are about the age 11. My grandson's 11. He can babysit his little sister for an hour or two. He can come home by himself off the school bus, and get his lunch put away and do his chores or whatever he's supposed to do. But he's 11. Now, if he was 18 and those were his skills, would I say to him, okay, here's some money, here's like $1,500, go pay your rent, get your groceries, do whatever you need to do, pay your bills? That would not be possible at all. Would he know what to do in case of certain emergencies, like maybe some that we've practiced, but not like when something comes up? Would he know who to call? Would he know what to do? So we really need to look at that. That's a huge problem for our kids who are moving on and transitioning into adulthood. Concept of time and money, probably down around an 8-year-old. Yeah, they know things cost. They know they have to pay. They wouldn't know sometimes if they get the correct change. These are the kids who are, or adults now at 18, who will, if they have a job and they have to be there at 9 a.m., they're probably still on their video game at 8:58.
And
they won't understand when we say, no, you have to leave. You have to instead say, you have to leave home at, if they have to take a bus, whatever, 8:30. You need to set it up to that degree. We take it for granted that if we say you have to be at work at 9, that they would know all the things to get there and how much that time they won't be able to have that. Social skills, same things. These are, and I'll talk a little more about social skills later, but maturity is down at 6. Social skills is at 7. So these are the kids. This is one of those things, concepts we never teach social skills to a degree. Right. These are things that like my grandkids learned automatically, and my daughter did. I didn't have to teach her. I didn't have to teach my daughter that it was okay at 2 to sit on the couch with uncle and sit on his lap and read a story. But it's not okay when you're 12.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And how would we know that language and moving around, right? So, for instance, if I was sitting on a couch and Danna came in and there was the whole couch available, because normally we sit on the end, she probably would sit on the other side of the couch, right? But these are the students who you might see them, they will sit right beside you. And that's uncomfortable, right? But we can read facial cues and expressions, and I would see, oh, I'm making her uncomfortable. They have trouble with that. So they would, like, I would, as, uncle, I would move over to the, like, whoa, or to Danna, I would move over a little bit and she'd pick that up. These kids won't. They'll probably move closer to you as you move over. That's very common.
Have you got anything to
The
add?
brain domain, there are 10 brain domains assessed in FASD, and one of the brain domains that will pick this up the best is adaptive functioning. So adaptive functioning, the ability for you to pick up on what you should be doing in the situation that you're in. And so in your classroom, I know we're not seeing a lot of 18-year-olds, but think about taking that dysmaturity slide and thinking if you're teaching 11-year-olds, we're going right down to 2 and 3 sometimes in comprehension and maturity. So good thing to remember for all kinds of ways. And we could go on forever, obviously, but I think we better move on.
We mentioned time and transition, and we are winding
Fiona.
down. And so I want to just throw one more at Danna. I think we're just about at the end, but number 5, transitions. And as I said before, many of our caregivers have, and myself, I noticed when I was living with these many individuals that transition from going to one thing to another, or an interruption in something that they're expecting. Can you give us a little insight on that, Dan?
So transitions come up a lot for us with teachers, probably the second next to homework and academics. How do I catch them up is how do I get them to the next place? That every time I ask Johnny and Susan and Kelly to do something new, I have a pushback. So I do have a couple of tips. And again, here's a place that you could help a caregiver out. If you're finding a transition strategy that works in your classroom, be sure to share that with a caregiver. So I'm going to give you a few. One is to add a transition buddy, and I don't know whether that's for the day or for the subject. That would be up to your classroom. But Pam, you're going to help Danna today, and every time I say, "Hey, it's time to whatever," you guys are going to go together because you're a transition buddy today. One of them is to, when with little ones, have the next thing for them. So you're going to hand them the math book, not make them go and find it, because then you're transitioning from spelling to the book, to the desk, to the spelling page. You want to limit those to one. So you hand them the spelling book with the page open or the math page after spelling to the book open. Gets rid of 3 transitions that way. You hand it to them, they know that that's coming up. Timers are great. They don't always work because it just can promote anxiety. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. So you don't want to add, that's another transition from the clock, right? Try it, see if it works in your classroom. One of the things we did recently was help a child transition from school to home by giving them a different role. So at school all day, you're a student. When you get on that bus, you're becoming a daughter. The rules are different when you're a daughter because we find often kids are stuck with the rules of either place. So think about transitioning with a new set of expectations, and that's laid out. For little ones, we're going to run to our desk, crawl to our desk, we're turtles to our desk, we jump to our desk, we follow a path to our desk. So Kelly, you follow the pink footsteps. Okay, now you're following the green dots, whatever that's going to be. But recognize the importance of more than a verbal warning that you're, okay, kids, get ready for math. If you can add something concrete to that and a friend, that would be my wrap up.
And I know this universally from just about every caregiver I talk to, please figure out something around fire drills, because it seems to be, I'm not going to tell you not to have them, but there might be a time where you can either excuse the student from not being there that day or give them a warning. And all I'm going to say is expect a possible behavior when it happens, because that fast, frightening, anxious thing could promote a escalation.
And in that case, I have a good example. I have a school who they have 2 students that is a problem for them.
Yep.
They, as a staff, they let them know. It's not a surprise for the staff there. And they take them outside for some free time.
Excellent.
When it's going to come.
Perfect.
Because that bell is much quieter when you're outside. Those students are going to come out to you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, let's go to our place and we'll be first in line when they get there.
And
I just remembered one thing, sorry, but it's a big topic. I was in a classroom and she had the children transition to one place. So you didn't go from spelling to math, you went always from spelling to the carpet.
Yeah.
Then she directed the next transition. So whether that's a little colored carpet in the middle of your room and everybody comes to that spot when the harmonica plays for that transition, but think in your mind how many transitions you make, how much executive functioning it takes to simply move from spelling to math to science, science to gym class, right? So many of those. So just, I think the goal would be keep it as simple as possible.
And repetitive.
One really quick thing. If you have an assembly happening that day and you put up your visual schedule and all you use is your little icon for the gym, and then you say, yeah, we have to go down to the gym for an assembly, they're probably not going to hear for an assembly, and they think they're going to gym. And we run into that all the time. So when that child opens that gym door and there's everybody sitting like crisscross applesauce all over they will often then lose it because I'm coming to play floor hockey.
Yeah, it's not their expectations. That will be Danna. I think I'll go to you first.
Because I have stuff. Hang on.
You have stuff, and we will look at what you've got to tell us about.
The question is, Danna, if you had to have top 3 things that you think every classroom needs, and I would say there are about 10. So congratulations to us for getting it down to 3. Here are my top 3 with the hands-on prompts.
Here they come.
It is really important that a student be part of their own learning plans, be part of own self-advocacy, and as children go through the school system, recognizing that they need to be able to say what works for them and what doesn't is really important. They need to feel heard. Recognize that whether it's the dysmaturity, the executive functioning, the comprehension issues, or whatever, that the story of their life may not be recorded in their brain in the same way that neurotypical students are. So as much as it is uncomfortable for us sometimes to find the details, my prop is a magnifying glass, and you need to see yourself. Educators, EAs, caretakers, school secretaries can all be detectives in putting together a story. We didn't spend any time on confabulation because we don't have time, but it's the other thing that we get talked about a lot. What do we do about Kelly and her confabulation and his confabulation? And my advice to us to keep ourselves sane is to you be the detective with their input, but don't let it stay there. It's not fair to a child whose brain doesn't work properly. In the same way, I can't count on my mom's storytelling of her own life now due to her beginnings of dementia, right? Think brain, and you'll know that you need to do this piece.
Danna, can you just mention what confabulation?
Oh, sorry, good point. Confabulation is teachers will call and say, I don't know what to do about Johnny's lying. We switched the term to confabulation. You add pieces. You aren't sure about whether it came from fantasy or a movie or what you did yesterday or last thing you heard. Confabulation is a putting together of the story versus a lying to be deliberate to get out of something. Not that these kids also don't lie, because all kids lie. It's about intention and processing. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Brenda.
All right.
What do you got?
What do I got? I have a slide. So I just want to talk quickly about strengths. I think it's really, really important that you know your students' strengths. And I see this a lot, and I see a change in people when they really focus on strengths. And by strengths, I mean their real strength. Like, please don't say they're artistic. You can say they like art, but if they're not actually artistic, where people would love their artwork, then let's just say they love art, because that's the truth of it, right? And we can use that then in the rest of their programming. We know that they like to manipulate art and the supplies in art. So that's something to think about. Same with when you get to be, are they good at sports? But they can't handle sportsmanship. So soccer might not be the goal for them, right? Because they're going to run and kick everybody because they have a goal and it's going to go in the, they're going to kick it into the goal.
It might be something as simple as individual sport versus team sport.
Exactly.
Right?
That's right. There's a lot of individual or even just 2 people, let's say badminton or something like that.
Right.
So we need to look a little bit different on how that could all work. But we need to identify their strengths. And if you look at the little icons on the side there, I have a shovel and a bucket. So just remember those. Sometimes we have to dig a little deep to find their strengths. They're not right at the top. They're not in your face. These students don't even recognize their own strengths. Okay, sometimes we might need an excavator. Sometimes we have to dig really deep. And it might be even the point, and something that I think is really important, is to be asking their caregivers, what are their strengths? When you have, and I love this idea, and I've seen it work so well, is when you're having an IPP meeting, any of your SIS meetings, any of your meetings where you have caregivers or different stakeholders around the table, start your meeting off with, let's introduce each other, ourselves, and tell me one strength you know about this student, one of their strengths. Wow, it makes a difference in us starting the meeting in a positive way and thinking positively about this student instead of the problem at hand. But it also makes that caregiver say, wow, look at all this.
Right.
This is way different than most meetings I go to.
Oftentimes they don't have a chance to celebrate, and that gives them something to celebrate.
Exactly.
Excellent.
And those are things that then they'll go back to that student with, right? Like, hey, I hear you're really good at blah, blah, blah. The other thing is focus on them. Make sure you focus on them. Make sure you use them in your programming. Keep that mental list in your mind so you can pull it out when you need it. What are they strong at? How can I involve them with that right now? Nurture and grow. I like to see, and I have schools doing this now, the first goal on your IPP, your individual program plan, the first goal is a strength goal, which means that you identify that strength, but then you say, how am I going to grow it? As a teacher, what am I going to provide for that student to grow that strength? And how are we going to take it and involve it in the rest of the school community? So that's my thing about strengths.
Thank you.
But if we switch things, I wanted to also talk about behaviors versus symptoms. This is one of my key words. Behaviors versus symptoms. I don't like the word behaviors. I really wanted to correct both of you on and say, don't use the word behaviors. But that's my big thing. I like to say that they're symptoms. I look at behaviors even in schools. I was just in a meeting the other day, and they were saying about behaviors. And I said, no, that's a symptom of their diagnosis. That's not a behavior. It's a symptom of their diagnosis. We know that we're going to have these things happen. We see it often. In this case, it was a little guy in kindergarten who was biting. That's communication. He does communicate as well, and he can process as quickly. So when he wants something from somebody, he's going to bite or yell or scream, right? And that's a symptom of that diagnosis. So we need to remember, think symptoms. Whenever you hear the word behavior, try and change it to oh, that's a symptom. That comes from FASD instead of this is a behavior and we need to punish it.
Sure.
I want to do a quick thing about glasses because this is probably my last big thing I'm going to tell you about. And this is a time that you guys can all have a good laugh and laugh at me because it is quite funny, actually. So I was a grown adult, like not that many years ago, where I went to the eye doctor. I grew up having 20/20 vision my whole life. And I have 4 brothers and 2 parents that all have glasses. So I was the one who got to say, I'll do that for you. I don't wear glasses. I can see perfectly. I can do this. And like, I hoarded it over my brothers. And they used to be like, we know, you have 20/20 vision, right? But I was so proud of it, right? So I always thought I had 20/20 vision. Good. But then as an adult, I'm diabetic now. So I had to go. I have to go every year to the eye doctor to get my eyes checked. So I went in and thinking, no big deal, 20/20 vision. They'll have a look at my eyes. I'll be fine. I go in and he's doing that whole flip, this A, B, 1, 2, read the things on the line. And I'm like, huh, he's trying to trick me. And he put the tiniest line up first. Well, when he was all finished and put everything, he turned towards me and he looked at me like this. And he said, so Brenda, have you been driving? Yeah, I've been driving. What do you mean? Like, no. I went in one appointment from 20/20 vision in my mind to wearing bifocals. So when I went back 2 weeks later to pick up my glasses and I left there, I had a huge aha moment. I went to Walmart first, and if you know about bifocals, your depth perception is completely off. But oh no, that I couldn't get that. But then I went to go down through this area that has a lot of signage. And my first thought was, oh, somebody washed the signs while I was in Cold Lake.
Oh dear.
Nobody washed the slides, right? But that was my aha moment. That was this is how my FASD kids work.
Yep.
They don't know that they see and process things differently than everybody else. And I didn't know that I saw anything differently. Now, he gave me glasses. They didn't fix my disability.
But
He
they
gave
sure
me a
help.
tool,
Yeah.
right? So remember that if you're having that kind of a thing, they're not picturing why theirs is wrong and they're blaming everybody else. What tool do they need? What do you take out of your
Brenda,
toolbox?
thank you for that insight. Get it? Before Danna closes us off, I want to say a big thank you to both of you. I want to thank each of you today, and you can join in future webinars. A reminder to the audience, next webinar, October 25th, and will feature this year's Sterling Claren Research Award recipient. To get more information on CanFASD and to stay in the know with respect to upcoming webinars, please check the website www.canfast.ca or follow us on social media channels to find our resources. I personally would like to thank CanFASD for this opportunity. Thank you and have a great day. Danna, please close us off.
Brenda and I want to leave you with a visual of this. If any person in your education system, if it's an administrator in you, a division office person in you, a caregiver in you, are feeling like you're walking into a box. If this is heart pounding, what fight am I going to have today? I encourage you, we encourage you to think about switching that mentality, that boxing glove mentality to, yes, there is a fight. There is a fight for rights. There is a fight for that, but think differently about moving that to a fuzzy mitts conversation. So think about putting on your love and your fuzzy mitts as you walk into any conversation around this complicated topic and all the topics that go with it, trauma, attachment, ADHD, all those kinds of things will be a part of the conversation that you have when you talk about students with FASD.
Mm-hmm.
Brenda, thank you.
Amen. Even with your students. Right.
Even with your students. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was great.